Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning, Mary.
Patricia, before we get into the gist of this new Netflix series, Atypical, we just referred to you as an Autistic Canadian. This is the way you prefer autistic as opposed to someone with autism. Tell me why.
Well, that's the difference between identity first and person first language. Disability rights movement has its roots in actually, unfortunately, eugenics. There was a time in history, and even still now, where disabled people weren't even considered persons or worth living. So as parents decided that wasn't a good thing, there was a push put on a long time ago to, instead of people being defined by their disabilities, they're a person. So person-first language. So that would make me a person with autism. As the Internet has allowed autistic people to form communities of our own, and we've been able to form our own voice, we've decided that that doesn't work for us and that we prefer identity-first language, which would make us autistic individuals. And that is because autism is a neurology. It's a neurological difference. It cannot and should not attempted to be cured. I need people to see I'm autistic. I need people to see that first so that they maybe have a better understanding of how to treat me and so they understand just maybe how differently I see the world. It's not something I ever want separable from me, so it is part of who I am, a very proud part of who I am.
And of course, Patricia, how people are going to see you is often influenced through pop culture, through movies and TVs. And this is a pretty big deal, this Netflix series, Atypical. Prior to this show, what were the representations of autism in popular culture?
Well, I think we kind of all know the big go-to, of course, is Rain Man. So that's the most we go to. So we're either represented as these brilliant geniuses, or you get to see people who need a lot of support needs, and that's usually viewed as a tragedy. And we, instead of seeing how the person is affected by the family and their surroundings, we always get to hear about how the family is affected and society is affected, by the difference of this person. So there was a show called Speechless. I haven't gotten to see that one yet. A lot of people in my community really like that one. So there's a few that are coming, but before this, there was a movie called The Accountant. That person was said to be autistic, but he was also a murderer. So we see that a lot. We see that because we're thought to be calculating, cold, with no feeling. We sometimes be represented as the brilliant murderer in plots. So we're not actually seeing a lot of just real-life representations of what it means.
That was with Ben Affleck. I remember I saw that.
Yes. Yes. So that was, and the language around that, as news agencies wanted to promote, the movie, the language used around that was very difficult. Because whenever there's a mass killing, especially if it's a white man and the person is said to be cold calculating, there's always this narrative that comes back, well, maybe he's autistic, and so that's the unfortunate blowback of these representations that we're seeing.
So before the series was released, you heard about it. How did you hear about it, and what were you hoping for?
Several years ago now, and we're trying to find the roots of it the other day, actually. Someone started the tag Actually Autistic, and so this is kind of our place, one of our biggest places on the Internet where we kind of find each other. And so we're pretty quick on the Internet. We're pretty quick to find stuff. So I found out about it pretty quickly through Twitter and that hashtag.
And what were you hoping for?
I was hoping, because it was Netflix, I was hoping maybe since it was away from mainstream, that we were going to see something that wasn't mainstream, where they chose the name Atypical. They kind of put out some press releases that said, we have autistic people on the cast and crew, we've talking to professionals, and so they gave us this little bit of a glimmer of hope that maybe we're going to see something that was something that we could get behind.
And you've now watched it. What do you think?
No. It's I won't say that it's completely negative because, of course, it has some very good points, but it has, first of all, walked right into the stereotype that autism is a white male condition. And there's still a lot of stats that try to back that up, but we now know that autism presents differently in girls. We also now know that the autism, there's a greater, for whatever reason, representation of the LGBTQ. I am dyslexic, so I apologize if I get those mixed up. Trans people in our community outside of normalized community. So we're seeing the very stereotypical view of what autism is, and that it's a white male condition. We're seeing every stereotype. There are times there are literally lines right out of the diagnostic criteria. It's so rigid a view of autism that it's completely unbelievable. Even I've spoken to friends of mine who are autistic, white male nerds, and they're made very uncomfortable by the representation as well.
And yes, exactly. You can tell sometimes it feels like they have gone right into the DSM and taken out these stereotypic characteristics, and this young man has every one of them. Practically.
Yeah, he does.
But, you said before when you were hopeful, and the production company who did this series, they were going to have autistic people in the cast and as well on the set. But in the end, how many cast members are autistic?
One. And I've reached out to them. I have experience in the film and television industry. Part of why I've taken this on so personally is I'd be sitting here right now with a 25-year career in the film and television industry if it was more accessible to disabled and autistic people or just neurodivergent, actors or cast and crew. It's not safe to reveal disabilities on film sets. You don't get to work after that. And it's the company reached out finally to me because I've made so much noise and I know how to ask certain questions, and I've been asking for their cast and crew numbers. And on general, shows like that can run anywhere between 60 to 150 cast and crew. So this is a very paltry token is the word. This person's a token. That autistic person has reached out to me a few times. They've sent them out to go, we're listening, but we're not getting anything beyond that.
Do you think that an autistic person should be portrayed by a non-autistic person? I mean, do you think they could have made an effort to find an actor who was autistic?
Absolutely. There are many of us. There's no reason in the world they couldn't have. They made a statement that the autistic actors that came to audition didn't suit their needs, which is very painful to hear. But it shows, though, what their view was, their understanding of autism. So the people they interviewed that were autistic, they didn't fit that role because their understanding is so skewed themselves. So that's pretty problematic. The creator of the show isn't autistic. And they've made a statement that they feel that they can now naturally portray our voice.
So it's a sense of appropriation.
Yes.
But another thing, too, there's only the ones that I've seen so far. He's sort of forced to sit down with another autistic young man who's a friend of his mother's, and he doesn't really want to. There's no sense that autistic people like to hang out with each other and have a community. It's like he's just isolated in the community. Yes. Is that another issue for you?
Absolutely, because this show is in modern day times for us to try to believe that the show knows words like neurotypical, autistic. They use functioning labels. He works in IT. They have computers. The parents go to support meetings. You're really expecting us to believe that he's never, ever run into anybody else. He has no sense of community. We know that that's completely different. We can be very isolated from each other, but the more and more we get to be around each other, I call it autistic oxygen. I got to go hang out with two of my autistic friends yesterday, and I got to sleep last night. I am so much more calm. I'm a better person today. I'm a peak Patricia. It just, of course, not all people are going to get along, but that is not true. Autistic people, when we get around each other, it's I don't know. In our differences, there's just this core thing that binds us that is just so strong, that it's undeniable, and that is completely not realistic view of how things go. Trying to force them to be together. That was really uncomfortable. And again, what did we see? They introduced a second autistic character, and he's male.
He's a young male, nerdy, high-functioning, and they're both sitting there kind of...
We're not introduced to an autistic person of color. Autistic people of color are so underrepresented. They don't even have access to diagnosis so much of the time. Diagnosis is a privilege, and this show is very privileged.
It doesn't give you the oxygen that you get with your friends who are autistic. One last thing. Should people watch the show? Can we learn anything from the show, or would you say skip it and do what? What would you say to people? It's a tough question.
It is a tough question because, if you could watch it with an autistic person, it would be great, but a lot of us can't watch it. Is the unfortunate part. I first only got 11 minutes in, and that's as far as I could get in the first episode. And as, some people said, well, maybe media might reach out, and I had a couple people reach out and say, would you write an article about it? I thought, okay, I have to do this, and I need to, because I don't want to be like them. I actually want to be 100% informed, so I made sure I watched it all. I read a lot. I learned about the person who created this show. If you will watch it and then reach out to the autistic community to see what we think, I would recommend it. But if you're going to use this as your only go-to to what autism is, no. Skip this one.
Patricia, do you have a Twitter handle that we could follow too if people want to get informed?
I sure do. It's pretty simple. It's at PG Zwicker, Zwicker. So at PG Zwicker.
It was an absolute delight talking to you today. Take good care.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.